She said, "We're better as friends." Those 5 words hit harder than any breakup line I'd ever heard. Not because I didn't see it coming, but because of how casually she said it. Like it meant nothing. Like the months I spent driving her home after midnight, cooking her dinner after long shifts, listening to every tear and every silence, were suddenly disposable. Her name was Madison. We met at a mutual friend's rooftop party in Austin. She wore this lilac dress that barely matched the city lights, and when she laughed, it felt like the noise of everyone else dimmed a little. She wasn't perfect, but she was magnetic, the kind of person you felt lucky to orbit around. Even if it meant burning a little dot at first, we were inseparable. Late-night tacos, bad karaoke, small secrets shared over gas station coffee. She'd text me things like, "You're my favorite human, and don't you dare date anyone else yet." It sounded playful, but I didn't realize that hidden in those words was a warning, not of love, but of control. I fell for her slowly, the way rain fills a cracked glass unevenly, but completely, and she liked it that way. Madison wanted the comfort of my loyalty without the label that came with it. "We're just close," she'd say when friends asked who I was. But then she'd get jealous when another girl laughed too loud at my jokes. She'd call me at 2 a.m., crying about her ex, then fall asleep on the phone while I listened to her breathing. I didn't see it then, but she wasn't keeping me close because she loved me. She kept me close because she didn't want anyone else to have me. The shift started small. Missed calls, delayed replies, plans she forgot to confirm. One night, I saw her story, dinner with a guy I didn't know. Captioned, "Date night? Maybe." My chest went hollow. I waited, thinking she'd text, explain anything. She didn't. When I finally confronted her, she laughed. Not out of guilt, out of disbelief that I'd even ask. "Don't be weird," she said. "We're just friends, remember?" That's when it clicked. I was a placeholder, a backup plan, a warm body she could rely on when life got cold. So I did something she never expected. I stopped treating her like she was special. I didn't block her right away. I just stopped chasing, stopped replying instantly, stopped checking her stories, stopped waiting for her name to light up my screen. And when she noticed the silence, she panicked. She started showing up more, at coffee shops I'd introduced her to, at the gym where I trained. Once, she even waited outside my apartment, pretending she happened to be nearby. But the truth was obvious. Her attention wasn't affection, it was desperation. She wasn't losing me. She was losing control over me. I thought that realization would make me angry. It didn't. It just made me tired. Tired of half promises, of being someone's emotional safety net. That night, I scrolled through our old messages, thousands of them, and saw the pattern for the first time. Every "I miss you" was followed by distance. Every "you're different from other guys" was followed by silence. Every time she said she wasn't ready, she still wanted to keep me waiting. So I blocked her. Everywhere, Instagram, WhatsApp, phone, even Venmo. And for the first time in months, my mind went quiet. But quiet doesn't mean peaceful. It means empty. I won't lie, part of me missed her. Not the real her, but the version of her I built in my head. The girl who looked at me like I was safe. The one who said she'd never let go. The one who never existed. A week later, a mutual friend told me she was freaking out. Apparently, she'd been calling around, trying to see if I was dating someone else. She even showed up at the same rooftop bar where we first met, wearing the same lilac dress. I didn't go, because the truth is, this wasn't about getting even anymore. It wasn't revenge. It was release. And sometimes, walking away quietly hurts more than any confrontation ever could. Still, I'd be lying if I said I didn't think about her face. When she realized her backup plan was gone for good, that thought was enough. It wasn't long before I started noticing the subtle ways. Madison tried to pull me back into her orbit. At first, it was indirect, liking every post I made, commenting with inside jokes only the two of us understood. She sent mutual friends little hints, questions about me that seemed casual, but weren't. It was the art of manipulation perfected. Make it seem innocent, make it seem like chance, and hope I'd step closer without realizing. I didn't. The harder she tried, the more I realized she wasn't the girl I thought I knew. The Madison I had loved, if I could even call it love, had been a ghost in my mind. The real person was messy, self-centered, and skilled at weaving guilt and desire into one tangled rope. She wanted attention, validation, control. She wanted me present, but never fully hers. Then came the messages. At first, just one or two, sent at random hours. Are you mad? I just want to talk. I think I made a mistake. The words were carefully chosen, like she'd studied exactly what would get under my skin. I didn't respond. I couldn't. And then she escalated. She showed up at places I frequented, coffee shops, the small library where I read, even the park where I ran in the mornings. Always coincidental, always just happened to be here. I started feeling like I was living under surveillance. Every step I took, every quiet routine I cherished, she was shadowing it. I felt something I hadn't anticipated, fear. Not fear of her physically, but of the chaos she carried, the drama she thrived on. She didn't know how to handle rejection, and I was suddenly in the crossfire of a storm I hadn't asked for. One night, a friend told me she was waiting outside my building. I stepped out to smoke, pretending it was just a random habit, and sure enough, there she was. Her eyes widened in relief when she saw me. I was hoping we could talk, she said, voice trembling. Half panic, half charm. I looked at her and didn't say a word. She tried the guilt trip next. After everything, you just disappear? She waved her hand, like my absence was a personal betrayal. I finally spoke, softly, almost like I was speaking to someone fragile. You knew this was coming. You left me no choice. Her face shifted, from hurt to disbelief to something darker, sharper. She wanted to argue, to twist reality, but the words wouldn't come. She realized, for the first time, that I wasn't going to beg, wasn't going to justify, wasn't going to be the backup plan anymore. That night, I walked away, leaving her standing under the dim streetlight, and I felt the strangest mixture of relief and guilt. Relief because I'd reclaimed a piece of myself I hadn't realized was missing. Guilt because part of me wondered if I had gone too far. But the truth was simple. She wasn't capable of the kind of love I deserved. She thrived on drama, on manipulation, on keeping people dangling like puppets. I had been one of those puppets, and I'd cut the strings. Over the next few weeks, I noticed the ripple effects. Friends started telling me about her behavior, frantic texts, calls in the middle of the night, sudden appearances at events she had no reason to attend. She was panicking, and the panic was entirely of her own making. I didn't feel joy in that. Not exactly. It was more calm observation, like watching a storm roll through a valley. You can see the damage it might cause, but you don't have to get wet. One evening, I received a message from a mutual friend. She's asking if you're seeing someone else yet. I smiled faintly, closed the chat, and didn't reply, because that wasn't the point. It had never been about jealousy or revenge. It was about boundaries, about claiming agency over my own life. It was about stopping the cycle before it consumed me entirely. And yet, I couldn't shake the thought of her face when she realized, truly realized, that I was gone, that there was no maybe left for her, that the person she had held as her safety net, her emotional security blanket, had finally let go. It was a quiet victory, subtle and unseen, but it was mine. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night without checking my phone, without replaying her words, without feeling like I owed someone my presence or my patience, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't scream or confront. It's walk away silently, let the other person crumble under the weight of their own choices, and keep moving forward. Madison's panic, her frantic attempts to regain control, became a backdrop to my own life. I started to notice things I'd ignored for months, the little freedoms I had lost in her orbit. Morning runs that weren't interrupted by her calls. Quiet evenings where I didn't have to think about her moods. Meals I could enjoy without texting her a picture. The world felt mine again, and yet, every now and then, I would catch a glimpse of her name in a friend's story or overhear someone mention her, and my chest would tighten just enough to remind me, this isn't closure, this is freedom. It wasn't long before Madison's panic became impossible to ignore, not for me, but for everyone around her. I started hearing rumors. She'd shown up at mutual friends' parties, asking about me in ways that bordered on obsessive. She was no longer the confident, teasing girl I had once known. The mask had slipped. What remained was frantic, insecure, and utterly unprepared for the consequences of her own actions. At first, part of me felt a flicker of satisfaction, not because I wanted her to suffer, but because the reality she had tried to control was slipping through her fingers. Every carefully laid plan, every manipulation she'd orchestrated, had collapsed. She had tried to dictate my life, to hold me in place for her comfort, and now, nothing but satisfaction quickly gave way to reflection. I realized that what had been most painful wasn't her antics, or even her presence. It was losing myself in the process. I had allowed her drama, her constant need for validation, to occupy space in my head and time in my life that didn't belong to her. And that, more than anything, had been the true violation. One night, I sat alone on my balcony, the city lights of Los Angeles flickering below like distant stars. I lit a cigarette, inhaled slowly, and exhaled the tension that had been coiled inside me for months. I thought about Madison, about the person she had become, and about the version of myself who had once been trapped in her orbit. I didn't hate her. I couldn't. Hatred is heavy, and I had learned that the weight of someone else's mistakes is not meant to be carried by you. What I felt was clarity, a kind of quiet understanding that some people will never change. And no matter how much you care, no matter how much history you share, some relationships are only meant to teach you how to protect your own heart. A week later, I received a message from one of our mutual friends. She asked if you were seeing someone else yet. She's panicking, saying she didn't expect you to move on so fast. I read it, smiled faintly, and set the phone down. I didn't reply. There was nothing to say. My life had moved on, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I finally allowed myself to breathe, to take the space that had always been mine, but was crowded by her demands. Then came the final confirmation. A story circulated among friends. Madison had thrown herself into a series of chaotic, attention-seeking events. She had called, texted, and shown up at multiple places in desperate attempts to regain control. And in the end, everyone around her had begun to see through the facade. The girl who had once seemed untouchable was now visibly unraveling. It was surreal to watch from a distance. I wasn't gloating, but the contrast was stark. I was calm, composed, living quietly in the city I loved, exploring the small freedoms I had reclaimed. She was frantic, restless, a prisoner of her own creation. The power had shifted, subtly, quietly, without a single word exchanged between us. And that was the beauty of it. Real power doesn't announce itself. Real control isn't loud or vengeful. It's in the quiet decisions, the boundaries you enforce, the refusal to let someone else dictate the terms of your happiness. I had taken back what was mine, my life, my peace, my freedom. I realized then that what I had done wasn't just about Madison. It was about me. It was about the first time in months that I felt fully alive, fully in control of my own story. I didn't need to text, call, or confront her. I didn't need an apology or a confession. I simply needed to exist, unencumbered, unchained. And in that space, I discovered a strange joy. Not the reckless, temporary joy of indulgence, but the deep, lasting satisfaction of knowing I had stood my ground. I had respected myself when no one else would, and I had walked away when it mattered most. The city hummed beneath me, indifferent and eternal. I watched the neon lights reflect in the glass windows of neighboring buildings, each one a little universe of stories, triumphs, mistakes, and regrets. I thought about the paths we choose, the people we let in, and the ones we must ultimately leave behind. And for the first time, I felt fully unburdened. Madison's panic, her frantic attempts to pull me back, were no longer my concern. I had closed that chapter decisively, silently, irrevocably. The lessons she had taught me about manipulation, self-respect, and boundaries were etched into my memory, and I carried them like armor. In the end, it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving a point. It was about living unapologetically, authentically, without letting anyone else's chaos dictate the rhythm of my life. And so I stepped back into the city, into the quiet, unassuming hum of my own life, carrying nothing but the clarity of having finally reclaimed myself.